Hey everybody, it's Jack with Future Pastimes, and this is Battle Language, where we're going to have a little bit of a group discussion about something relating to the Dune board game. I'm joined by Greg Olotka from Future Pastimes, and I'm joined again by MrNobody, who's one of our playtesters and a longtime Dune fan. And today we are revisiting the GameFound page. There's no news, there's no update. It may be sometime before we get an update. They're not really launching this campaign until 2025. But we know, and we don't even really know when in 2025. So probably not like, January or February. It'll probably be midway or later, I expect, that they launch the campaign. As of this date, Future Pastimes doesn't even really know what's going to be in this campaign yet. So Gale Force 9 is being very secretive, and they're probably getting their ducks in a row. They have another game found that they're getting ready to kick off. It's their Star Trek Ascendancy one, and I think they want to pay close attention to making sure that that is done as well as it can be done. They do care about being realistic with their estimates and their fulfillment, and to being responsive to fan needs. So I appreciate that, and I think it will be fun once we do know what it is going to be about, and when they let us talk about whatever it is. We are over 16,000 people interested, so that's a pretty interesting number, Greg, considering that there really isn't very much information on the campaign page. We've got some accolades. It's great. At one point it was 8.0 on Board Game Geek. It's not now. I think it's 7.9 or 7.8, whatever. A new dawn rises over Arrakis. That doesn't mean anything. Some more stuff. So here we have an Ultimate Collector's Edition of Dune with luxury components. So that seems to be the centerpiece of it. We're talking about luxury components, which we've talked about a lot on my channel. I've got a whole playlist called Deluxe Dune. And so I imagine that Gale Force 9 is looking at a lot of those Etsy style things as well. Contains brand new content. So we at Future Pastimes, we know what that means. And with new forces joining the battle for spice, we can't really talk about that yet. But we have an understanding here. Introduces a brand new way to play Dune like never before. We also have a pretty decent idea of what they're talking about there. So that's not a surprise. But again, there's a lot that could be in this. If they're calling it a Kwisatz Haderach edition, is it just a collector's edition? Does it mean that nothing is different or improved and changed, corrected? We don't know. We've got this. Also have this first player coin or marker, which strictly speaking is not necessary. It's not a mystery. You can easily calculate who the first player is by looking at the board and seeing where the storm is. But you know what? That's fine too. So that's it. That's all the information that we really have so far from Gale Force 9. We do have a lot of comments. So there were up to 448 comments here, 0 updates. And I like to look at the comments and to get a sense. And people are talking about this, like I think there's a Reddit thread or talking about it, and there's discussions on Board Game Geek, and people gathering around the fire in their homes or whatever, discussing what will be in this edition. I know that we do that around the fire at my house. So yeah, I think it's worth doing a kind of a December check-in to talk about stuff and see which way the wind is blowing. So if we look at some of these recent comments, so totally interested and excited from Fairy Dragon Girl. That is great. And one other person concurs with that. And we have MrNobody himself. So I think we recently figured out that is the same MrNobody. So you have chimed in with this idea about a sand timer, keep the game on track. So we play on in Tabletop Simulator, there's a nice little 2-minute timer there that we use it for shipping and movement for sure. And it's not something that is strictly enforced, but it is a nice way to kind of, cattle prod somebody into, it's been a while. Why don't you make a move here? And like, oh yeah, I should do that. And I think a sand timer would be good. They do, when you play Dune in a tournament session, they do have, at least in the ones that I've seen, they have some certain timed things. Like when alliances happen, you've got a certain amount of time where you can go confer with your ally, but they're like, let's keep things moving. We don't want it to be a limitless amount of time. Take a couple of minutes, look at the board, We'll take a picture of the board and walk away and feel like it's not against the convention to use technology for that purpose. But certainly feel free to disagree. Um, and I suggest that the timer should look like a Shai Hulud, and Greg suggested it look like a thumper, which might be a nice
That
way. It
was
would be great to have a very Dune themed little thing in there. Yeah, Greg, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, speaking of time, can we talk a little bit about one of the other, back to the comments in time, people really want a streamlined, revised set of rules that addresses all the FAQ um, unknowns, and let's just do it all in the rule book and get rid of the FAQ if we can. How much can we talk about that, do you
Yeah,
think? Or is
well,
that,
let's wait till somebody brings it up, and that way
okay,
they're driving the conversation.
yeah. I know that
Really,
it's in here, like earlier comments
yeah,
were checking, but I thought time was interesting because there could be, well, as a functional reason to include the timer, more specific defined times in the rules. Like you have 5 minutes to form an alliance. You have, um, you know, where
yeah.
some of
I
the other
mean,
these are some
it's
points
funny
to
because
have.
there is a mention in the rules about how long you have to make a bid.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how, for me personally, I don't know how necessary that sort of thing is. Any kind of reminders that you can have to just like keep things moving because this could be a 5 hour game and that
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe nobody is looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't want to have anything in there that's like, you have exactly up to 2 minutes to do this and then what? And then what happens? You lose your turn and then,
Yeah.
who's happy about that? So I think,
Three to the warp. Oh, wrong game.
yeah, I know. I think you just have to sort of say, look here. I think the way that you do this is that I would change the tagline on the board game to say it's the epic game of conquest, diplomacy, and betrayal, and that this is an event game, and just lean into that to say, look, this is a game that if you're expecting to be done with this in half an hour, it's probably not going to happen. And if it did, it's probably not going to be a very satisfying experience because somebody won on turn one because somebody else was just not paying attention. And so that is not the optimal Dune experience to try to get it done in under an hour. We're talking, it's probably 2 3 hour game, and it certainly could go longer. And I think there are ways, if we were going to make a new edition or do any kind of changes, there are ways that we could speed things up. But I don't know that necessarily enforcing strict times on there. There might be a thing you could add to the rule book that talks about how to speed up the game if it's going really long. But then again, maybe that's too much inside baseball to say that, and to say, yeah, the speed up the game is, hurry up and make a decision. I mean, I don't know how helpful that is as a suggestion. What do you
And
think,
you're
Mr.
gonna.
Nobody? Should we be trying to encourage people to figure stuff out? This is a deep strategy game, and you got to try to stay 2 steps ahead of everybody. And so there's a lot of considerations in there, but what can be done if anything?
Yeah, I mean those are fair points, and that's a good question. I played Dune, obviously like via tabletop simulator, with you guys a lot in play testing, which is kind of similar to like the in-person experience. And then there's another way that you can play Dune, which is like the Dune by Discord. It's kind of like in diplomacy, like I know they do like play by mail, where like you're kind of mailing each other, like, hey, here's my moves, here's my offers, here's my counter offers.
Yeah.
I think that in the face-to-face Dune, or like you're playing a tabletop simulator, really the ways that the game can kind of get bogged down unnecessarily is when you have somebody that is like offering deals out of turn, or they're trying to figure out like a shipping and movement thing, but it's like, well, maybe I could throw to you here, but then you would need to work out something with this guy to, block here, because if you don't, then they're going to go and then they could get in there and then they could win. And it can kind of feel like it's very, very long. So even if it doesn't end up being like a strict adherence to like, hey, you have exactly like 2 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever to figure this out, it would kind of be nice if it got to the point to where like maybe just in storm order, like as you kind of go, you need to be able to like make deals and things. And then if there are counter offers and you need to like add in like a timer or something like that, maybe then is when it could be like, okay, well, Harkonnen's trying to move, Guild, you're going to go after everybody, but then they're interjecting to say like, well, wait a minute, before you do that, why don't I, counter offer in this way when if they would have just went, you could have waited after and then be like, hold on, I'm going to consider interjecting, and then now I'm going to make my offer now knowing what you're doing, if you understand what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
it could get sorted out very cleanly based on like where you're at in storm order and when it's your turn to like take any kind of specific action, because the freeform stuff is great. Like, don't get me wrong, because like you can get into really interesting table talk, and if you've ever been in a game with Jaded and Malister, some really crazy like non-talk stuff kind of goes on between those two guys. It's actually really, really, really entertaining. But yeah, that was kind of my thought process beside from having the timer is to just make it where, okay, we have a clear delineated, like, okay, we need to keep everything moving. We tip this thing over. Let's get the ball rolling. And then, either move into the next player's, ship and move, or, it'll be their turn to kind of take action.
Yeah, I mean, your point is, I think, is very well taken. As much as I love the social dynamic in the game, and in fact, it's my favorite thing in all of board gamedom. It can certainly get very out of hand quite quickly, and go on for a long time in certain games of Dune, especially people who thrive on that sort of wheeling and dealing and very calculated gameplay. But I'm still reluctant to have any kind of formalized, this is how long you have to do this, because it's ultimately going to be toothless, unless you've got a harsh penalty. But I think the presence of a sand timer, I think, is a nice visual way to say, all right, we want to keep things moving, and so you've got that thing that's staring you down while you're trying to make your deals, and and I would couch it in the terms of courteous gameplay. Like, not everybody is involved in this deal, and some of us are waiting to take our turn, and some of us have taken our turn and we're waiting for the next phase to get to. So let's try to be reasonable about the gameplay, and we're going to say, look, try to get your turn done by the time the sand runs out. We're not going to big pile on you afterward, but we are going to give you a look. And that's probably about all that you would really do. But I think just having that little extra game component element in there helps to reinforce that message. So that's my hope, is that's all you really need. But, with different people in different groups, or when you're playing with a new group and that sort of thing, who can say? And sometimes it just doesn't quite work out. Let's dig down. There were a couple of replies to that one. Somebody wants some bronze glitter in there to make it look like spice, and I kind of love that idea. Any recent updates? No. So where can I shut up and take my money? I just like Dave Sade's attitude there, and Olda agrees, so that's fine. Mr. Gunn, I'm very excited about a new edition of this classic. So here we go, Greg, and he's got 3 thumbs already. Somebody, I don't know who this is, so it's not a plant that we know of, trying to do our bidding. Excited about a new edition of the classic. And I'll admit, the first time I saw this and it was characterized as Dune, Kwisatz Haderach edition, my thought was, oh, good, a new edition, which I think I would be thrilled to have, irrespective of my personal involvement in it. And I think that it comes for me in a couple of flavors. One is fixing things that we know could stand to be fixed, and the other is just clarifying it. So to your point earlier, Greg, when you talked about the rule book, and we know from the past, there's quite a few people commenting here and elsewhere about a new rule book, and that rule book in 2019 was hastily put together. And again, for everybody who doesn't already know this, you're trying to distill the Avalon Hill rule set, which is composed of what your dad and Bill Eberly and Jack Kittredge would consider the rules, which is what's now considered basic. And then the Avalon Hill stuff that was slapped on. And slapped on sounds really harsh. They played around with it. There's some really well thought out stuff, but they added it on. It wasn't, you're the original designers. We're not party to that process. They didn't get to say, great, let's play test this. And really get some sign in on it. Because I suspect if your dad and Bill and Jack had play tested all of the optional rules from the 79 edition, there would have been some changes. I think spy styling would have been at the top of their list of like, we don't love this, we don't understand it, and we think that there's a better way to do what it is that you're trying to do here. And
the intent was good. We know the intent was to make the outcome of the battle less certain, and we know that you talked about that a million times. But the execution was wonky, especially including the Sardaukar. Any forces that were worth more than just 1 point, it just starts to get fussy.
Yeah.
And even hardcore gamers, even hardcore Dune fans, like, wow, man, this just gets a little bit fiddly down at the end here. And we know some people they'll play everything advanced except for spy styling. They'll say, we'll just pick and choose what we want to do. So I really feel like it's our job is to present the purest, best executed version of all of the rules, all of the best of the rules that have been done. I mean, really going back to 1979. It's amazing. There's been so many fan editions. There's been so many ideas that people have come up with and worked into their own games over the years. And we have the benefit of taking all of that collective wisdom and distilling it down to the canonical, the one true way. And of course, the gamers can go off and you all can do what you want to do.
Well, that's going to be inevitable. I mean, even no matter what happens, people are going to do it the way they want to do it. But then you got like people like the shut up and sit down guys who are like, what would be great is if there were just one way to play this game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're like, all right, but at the end of the day, if nothing else, if we're not really talking about a new edition of the game, and then we just end up with it's the same edition, but it's mostly a deluxe edition. We do want to revisit that rule book and at least rewrite it with more clarifications built in so that we can indeed eliminate as much of that FAQ as possible. But a lot of it's not just in the rules, it's on the faction sheets. And so it's a matter of like, all right, those should probably be redone. And, the biggest change to the faction sheets is putting that once per game Karama effect on the sheet, so you're not having to look it up in the rules. That is just obnoxious, and nobody really likes that. And it also gives you the chance to make sure that you're clear about when you can do that, and you're clear about how it's implemented. But Karama is the second thing on the list of things that if we were making a new edition, we would want to overhaul. Right now, if you go into like a tournament setting, they're going to present you with a 20-page document of all the different ways that Karama can be used to stop or not stop different faction advantages in different phases, and whether or not you can do it and how it's implemented. And there's no consistency whatsoever, and it is very confusing, and it's just a hot mess. And you got this card that's doing 4 different things. That's just absurd. So no card should do more than 2 things.
You talk about the faction sheets a minute ago there. Another big change is going to be taking, if we can get all the rules set into one bundle, no more advanced game advantage header. It's like taking all of those abilities and wrapping it into the whole thing.
Well, yeah, if it were a new edition, you would want to say, look, let's just make a single rule set. And so not basic, not advanced. I think, you're going to lean into the long pedigree of this game over 40 years. Like I say, 45 years that it's been in existence. It has taken on a life of its own. It is no longer that basic game that Future Pastimes designed in 1979 that is just composed of what we consider now basic rules. It's just not that game anymore. For a huge majority of people who play Dune, they're either playing advanced or they're playing some hybrid that is mostly advanced, but they've got a different way to approach the combat. Not that many people, just not as a significant a percentage, is saying we're just sticking to the basic rules and have no plans to go any further. But Mr. Nobody, what do you think about that? What's your feel on people who are just like, you know what, all we know is the basic rules, and that's all we care to know? Do you feel like that is a significant portion of the gaming world, especially in light of the publication of Dune Conquest, which is basically basic in the huge spotlight?
Yeah, my experience has been the majority of players that I meet and the majority of players that I end up playing with prefer the advanced rules, including like the spice combat. And I think it's just because they prefer the extra added advantages that everyone gets. They
Yeah.
prefer, I guess, like the economic elements, like when you fight. So, for example, like in the basic rule set, if if the Bene Gesserit are fighting the Emperor and the stacks are even, the Bene Gesserit just have an advantage. Like there's no, it doesn't matter that you're the Emperor. It doesn't matter that you've got, 25, 30, 40 spice behind your shield. But in advanced, now you've got the Star Forces, you got the Sardaukar, and you've got all this money. So now all of a sudden it's not quite as clear in this battle who's necessarily going to win. It's not quite as clear as like which one of these two necessarily have like an advantage, right? Because one could beat the other one on numbers, but and then there's always a traitor, et cetera, et cetera. I personally, and I've said this before to a lot of people, if basic was the only way that I could play and enjoy Dune, I would not feel that my experience of the game is diminished in any way, shape, or form. Likewise, if advanced with the spice dialing and everything was all that existed, I would equally love, enjoy, and play the game. Because the first probably 10 or 15 games I played of Dune was just the basic rules. And we were kind of like hesitant to get into spice styling, mostly because we were like, wait a minute, how exactly does this work? Yeah, because it's like, wait a minute. But then you start playing and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And then it kind of becomes second nature now. Except my girlfriend, she always plays the Fremen, and then you hand her anything else, and she's like, "Wait a minute, how do I do this?" And it's like,
Yeah.
never mind, just take the desert people. Like we'll sort this out a different way. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, the majority of the people, they prefer like the breadth of Dune, right? Like they prefer, we want to play with advanced, and then you kind of cherry pick expansion 1, expansion 2, expansion 3 modules. Some people like the kitchen sink. Some people are like, we don't want expansion 1 treasure cards, but we want expansion 3 Nexus cards. We don't want to do stronghold advantages, but we do want to do leader advantages. So it's such a modular game now. Like it's very much a pick and play, kind of style game, and I really
sometimes you're gonna be telling that to how much time do we have? Well, we only have we've got all weekend. Throw it all in, but we've got lunch. We won't even play Spice Dialing, but because we're just playing at lunch or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this is just not a lunch game. I mean, here the thing is that even when it was just, even if you were just limiting yourself to the basic rules or what used to just be the rules, it wasn't ever as basic as people like to pretend it is. It's always been a fairly epic game. It's always been a game with a lot of nuances. You've got this whole idea of I have ornithopters sometimes, and I've got this treachery deck which has surprises in it like family atomics, which if you don't know that that's in there, you're never going to suspect that it's in there. So you've got a lot of these wild effects, and you've got the different interactions of the factions together. It's asymmetrical, and so that already has lent itself to this is an epic game. You were never playing the basic rules and saying, yeah, we're playing this game at lunch and we'll be done. Just not likely to happen, especially if you're like in the optimal setting of 6 players. it's going to be lunchtime. At the end of lunch will be over at the end of the first round of the game, and so unless it's a 1-round game, you're just it's like, well, this is our lunch for the week, and we were like, yeah, I think we can finish this up by Friday. So it's always kind of had that epic feel to it, and the advanced rules, they just fill it out some more. And with the spy styling, for the people who love the spy styling, it's for them, it's like a badge of courage. They're like, hey, I finally grokked this in my head, and so now I can hold it over other people and be like, I'm spy styling all the time. I love it. It's easy. And you're like, well, it's really not easy to explain to somebody who has never done it, especially, like you said, when you throw the Emperor in there. That's where it starts to break down, because you're like, I've got 2 regular, 2 Sardaukar, and 3 spice. What am I doing? And so it's not intuitive. And it takes what is, in my opinion, the most elegant and at the same time sophisticated battle system, and it makes it clunky. And so that's the thing. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty that we could talk about in that, but let's dive back in here. So that was Mr. Gunn's comments here. I really hope considerable effort is into making the rules very clear. Love this game, but we've had to spend a lot of time on BGG. So that's my hope is that is a high priority for Gale Force 9, irrespective of what is eventually going to be published. That it's not just, hey, we've got some deluxe components and, you can do add to cart to get this expansion. But the rule book is the rule book. As I mentioned before, it was hastily put together. They did a pretty good job, but you did not have any of the guys from Avalon Hill helping you to put the rules together in 2019 when they were publishing it. And so
I don't think that would have helped much. I think
it would have been probably worse. But
pretty well.
Yeah, so again, you're working with people who are very familiar with the basic rules, but you've got this whole extra part of the game, the advanced rules, and that it's in the advanced rules, not exclusively, but in a lot of those advantages and some of the interactions, like we've got 2 spice blows, and with the spy styling. That is where a lot of your FAQ shows up. I mean, you've got 2 pages of FAQ questions on advisors alone, and advisors is an advanced thing. It was something that Avalon Hill, and and part of it, they had this great solution of, we've got the tokens with 2 states. We got a fighter side and an advisor side. That's not how they were in the Avalon Hill edition. So you're trying to, figure out how coexistence works, but you have a visual marker now. But yeah, it just, they solved one problem and they created another one. So Rex Peck says this is a very poor announcement. So I don't agree. I think it's a great announcement, but there's, of course, is he talking about the fact that there's a Kwisatz Haderach edition? Oh, I think he's talking about, there's no information. I think that's what he's saying. But maybe not. But I'm very excited about this announcement, at least while I still have a glimmer of hope about what it could be.
Going for the long lead time.
Mahagic will it launch in early 2025? We don't know the answer, but the answer is no. Spanish edition. There's quite a few people like, we want it in Spanish and in Polish and in Greek. And I'm like, well, I hope so. We'd love for more of the world to be able to play and enjoy this. Getting stuff translated is always a mixed bag. We've worked with translators on a few things, and a lot of times working with the translators has helped us to put out a better product, because they find all the things that are not clear that we're taking for granted, and they go, what the hell are you talking about here? And we go, oh yeah, we should really reword that. We had some translators that helped us with the Arrakis rules, and they caught a few really big glaring errors that were able to be fixed in English. But yeah, I mean, we would love to see different language editions, because that just means that more people are playing it and able to enjoy it, and hopefully are playing it the way it's intended to be played. But there's really no way for us to verify that the Spanish translation is right, because we don't speak good enough Spanish to be able to really do that. We're hoping that the translators understand it. It would be great to play. It would be great to just bring translators into Tabletop Simulator, those who can speak English and their native language or whatever the case may be, and just go, let's play this, and make sure that you're playing it right,
I would think
and
if they're
then and
translators,
answer questions.
they're definitely going to have people speaking English.
That would be so great to be able to do that. All right, so Invictus wants to know which edition is this for, Classic Dune or Dune Conquest and Diplomacy? It's Classic Dune, and everybody else has figured that out. But yeah, Dune Conquest it's like Logan's Run. It turned 30, and now it's ascending into the ether. Which is too bad, because it is this is a game that you can play at lunchtime, absolutely, and you can play with 2 people, but alas. All right, Polish language, yeah. Well, we'll see.
Sure.
When will this beauty be live? Hopefully sometime next year. Cassie wants to know. I'd love to see more diversity with the character tokens. To be clear, I adore the art of the reprint. It's just all very white. Yes, it's almost 100% white in the base game. You've got Dr. Yui. He's doing all the heavy lifting for the non-white community. And I, Greg, you and I are 100% on board. We'd love to see a little refresh on those base game leaders. And in fact, I would love to do a refresh on some of the leaders, like most of the Emperor leaders. They don't have names. They just have ranks. Cade, Basher, those are not their names.
The Bursig.
Yeah, Bursig. That's a rank.
Yeah.
But the thing is that back when, in 1979, and they were really only going off of that first book, partially because of legal reasons.
They did have to go to Mentats to get the guild characters at all. Just to flesh out that faction.
Exactly. But yeah, now we've benefited. There's over 20 books that give us more characters, more lore. I'd love to revisit that and pop a few more names in there. But yes, add some diversity to the characters. I think it would be nice. Quinter wants to know solo or 2 players. Solo, I'm going to go out right here and I'm going to say no. There's not going to be any solo. We could maybe talk about how you can approach doing Dune as a 2-player game, but it's just so unfulfilling. I think at 2 players.
Can I make a comment on the solo thing?
Yeah, jump in there.
So the problem is, because I've thought about this too, because I don't really have a large group of gamers in real life, and I do have a collection of board games, some of which I like to play solo. The problem is the combat resolution in the game is almost impossible to do with the components as they are if you're trying to play by yourself, because you would need to somehow randomize the enemy leader. You would have to figure out, without knowing the cards in their hand, what weapon or defense they would reveal to play, and then you would have to also randomize and figure out what traitor, if any traitors of yours they have. It's almost like you need another person or a group of people there to take on the role of your adversaries. You would almost have to create a new deck of cards with leader, weapon, defense, and then you're almost playing a different game. So you would have to add in all of these extra elements and components and stuff, and it's I don't know that it's actually feasible without changing the core gameplay elements. You see what I'm saying? I almost feel like it would change it too much and get it far away from what the actual design is.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to have a whole new set of cards. I mean, you could do it, but because you're losing all of the diplomacy, all of the interaction, that it pales as an experience, and it's just these raw mechanics of I'm shipping here, and and now I'm flipping over a card to see where you ship, and did I get lucky? I mean, you probably would flip over a card and it would be, okay, the card would say the guild is shipping 6 forces into Arakeen, and the Bene Gesserit are shipping 8 forces into Carthag, and so you're like, okay, great, and where did I ship? And maybe I got lucky, but I'm gonna have to fight one of them, and then you would have maybe it's a separate set of cards, probably would have to be, that would be okay, I'm fighting, and here's the leader that they used and the cards that they played, and if so and so was your leader, then it's a traitor. And so, but again, I just feel like it would not be a very satisfying experience. It would not get
I mean,
high
you're up
marks
against
as
you're up
solo.
against people's current opinion is like you got to play this with at least 5.
Yeah, I
So
mean, like
going to
most
1,
people are like, if you're not playing at 6 players, then put it back on the shelf.
yeah,
So, and I'm kind of in that group. I would rather play it with 6 than any other number.
the
And
answer to solo,
certainly, like, I don't
yeah,
even like to play it 3 players. And the idea of doing this with 1 or 2 players is just anathema. So I don't,
the rich,
and it
the
would just be
real,
too much work. It would be too much work
the
for
real
us in
richest.
the timeline. We just wouldn't be able to, we wouldn't have enough time to do it. We'd need to be working on it right now. And we have not been given that directive. So, yeah, I don't know, but and if they said, look, we'll do a new edition of the game if you come up with solo rules, then I would bust my ass to get some good solo rules done. I can tell you that, but it would be they'd have to pay, they'd have to pay us something up front, and of significance. Because I don't do a lot of solo board gaming. So when I'm doing something in a solo game, I don't know if I'm having fun. So it's hard for me to say this is good. This
I
is really
don't know.
well done. I don't know if I'm having fun. So I
I
rely on the
think
That's hilarious.
playtesters. We did have
I
to do
think
that with
That's
Conan. I did
yeah,
end up. I was very satisfied with Conan solo mode. Which at first I was like, no, there's no way I want to do it because I don't do solo board gaming. But it was important to them. They really wanted it to happen. So I put in a lot of effort to make that happen. And I leaned on Greg and I leaned on a lot of the other playtesters to be like, all right, let me know what you think. What do you like about this? What do you not like? What needs to be changed? And
it
got
was
it to
fun.
the point where
I
I
learned.
was actually
Yeah,
enjoying it as well. And so I'm proud of that solo mode and I look forward to hearing what people think of it. But
yes,
Dune is just, it's so wildly different from Conan that again it would just to make it be something that is fun. It's a heavy lift. I'm not saying we can't do it, but we would need
I,
to get the green light on that really soon if they want to get this done in a year. And yeah, it's suddenly the box is getting really big. So let us know. We'll do solo mode, Gale Force 9, if yeah, if we can
You
do a
know,
brand new edition
I I wouldn't
packed
want to
you
full
know
do
of
it
what
like
might be
goodies.
a
a board game. The way to do solo mode is make the digital version and play bots. That's
Yeah,
how you do it. Then you can learn the
there
game.
there is
That's
a pretty good
There's
digital
the only way
solution
to do
out
it.
there, which is not
Yeah,
certainly
treachery.
yeah, it's not really,
you know what
it's not
you know what
official.
might actually
No.
you know what actually might make an interesting battle language is if we get together again and like, okay, so hypothetically, if you were going to do a solo mode for this game, what would we do?
Yeah.
And then just like
Put a
spitball a bunch
put a
of
pin in that,
ideas.
Mr. Nobody. We'll gather up a few of
Okay,
the nibes, and we'll talk about that. But yeah,
you got it.
let's zip ahead. We'll get through a couple more things. We got German edition. We have A Bon saying a few points of inspiration in case you need them. I think this is the yeah, Kwisatz Haderach, the comprehensive thing. So we did a whole video. I've done at least one video on that. So that's a good thing. I recommend people go to that link and chime in. It covers all kinds of deluxe component ideas, but also new edition ideas as well. Somebody wants it in the Czech language. Now we're really yeah, Chinese. This would be be hilarious.
Great.
Another Polish. So we've got 2 votes for Polish. They're winning. Storm Skimmer has got a whole block of text with a lot of Chome references. Let's dive into that and we'll see what we got
Oh, I
here.
know this guy. I know this guy.
I've been playing Dune
He's the
since
one guy.
Avalon Hill. I don't
Yeah.
want the game to be fixed. Oh, here's somebody that.
Yeah.
Well, you
I
know
know this
what?
guy.
You go play your Avalon Hill version because it
Yeah.
does need to be fixed.
You can
Show
get it for
meetings
200
carryover.
bucks.
In fact, I'm just going to skip right over that. All right. So now
Yeah.
let's look at it. Look at it a little bit more. I've always played except with the promised deluxe components. My original is unplayable, played to death. So I appreciate the Gale Force 9 version. Well, he's got the Gale Force 9 version. So
Hey,
if all he wants is deluxe components, that is a possibility. But durability, blah, blah, blah. I do like expansion options, Spice Harvest. So yeah, JP announced that in the video. So people are like, "Why do you know?" I was like, "Well, it's out there. He said it. Just because you can't find that video now doesn't mean he didn't say it. So it's out there. Of course, it's not going to be exactly like it was. So because you know why? We fixed it a little bit, but we'll get to that at some point. I do play House Rules version. Oh, wait a minute. That sounds like a fix to me. But let's see.
Okay.
where those CHOM meetings carry over into the main game to spice up. I used to talk about spice arms. That's not really a fix. There's already a CHOM phase in the game, so those who enjoy expanding it. So yeah, that's an interesting idea. Could work with CHOM faction. Yeah, maybe. Dune has always been about providing players with options of how they prefer to play the game. Well, what I can say to you, Storm Skimmer, is they say right in here on the announcement, brand new way to play Dune like never before. And we can't really talk about this, but what I can say is that you need to bold, underline, and italicize the word way because it's going to blow your mind. And that's all I can really say there. New way to play. So he wants the dual expansion. He may be the only person I've ever heard from who loved that expansion, if he even liked it. But here's the good news. We fixed that too. So it's not going to be quite what you expect unless Gale Force 9 really wants to go hog wild, because I've got some ideas for adding some hog to make it more wild. Yeah, you love the Canley duel. Yeah, that's all interesting. All the expansions used in a game, but more than 6 players. So optional rules about using 2 factions. I mean, you can do that. I would say just use the Dune Conquest rules. That seems to work pretty well. So yeah, it's not too bad from Storm Skimmer. His was not terrible. So you like our game? Yeah. What is he talking about? All right, that's somebody replying. Why first player token? Cassia Oak asks. Turn order is dictated by the storm's proximity. Is this an oversight already? I think basically what Gale Force 9 has done is they've said, future pastimes, come up with a good reason to have this token. So that's on us, Greg. We've got to come up with, a real good reason to have this token, not just as a visual marker of, for those of you who can't look at the storm and see that it's approaching my circle, therefore I am the first player. Here's an extra little thing. Yeah, I mean, first player markers, they're so, it's so vogue in board gaming. But again, Dune thought about this ahead of time. We have a way to very easily tell who the first player is, and it didn't require any extra components.
And it was built in, and it was a clever mechanic already built into the game. It's such a huge part of it, and that it helps, and it's sort of a natural balancer too. And you can, because if you have control over the storm, then you can use that to your strategic advantage to make sure that someone does or does not become the next new first player.
Yeah.
There's
But yeah,
storm built into that.
It's an interesting thought experiment, Mr. Nobody. What could we use that first player marker for? And let's open it up. They may be calling it currently the first player marker, but what would we just do with an extra, metal coin with Shai Hulud on it? Something fun.
I mean, you can show it to your friends. You can be like, "Look, I got the Kwisatz edition."
I want a ring with that is basically a sandworm that wraps around my finger. Yeah, or a signet ring. So kind of like how the Freemasons used to be like, we've got a ring so we can recognize each other and know that we're in the secret society.
Yeah, and the secret handshake. One thing I was going to say is, in regards to not necessarily the first player marker, but the faction markers around the board, if Gale Force 9 does this and they end up expanding the board, please, 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 if you guys are listening, take the faction markers and move them back like a half an inch so that when you move the storm marker, it doesn't actually like bump or knock the faction markers. So they're just a little further back so you can move the storm marker around and it's not going to like knock anybody's off the board. That's kind of like been the only thing like components wise that that was out of the base box that I was just like, well, this seems a little silly. I don't know why they didn't just like, bump those guys back a little bit.
Yeah, it helps when you've got the 3D storm. That fits into that space a lot more conveniently than the token does. But yeah, this this seemingly very small and insignificant thing is quite elevated on my list of things I would like to
Yeah.
tinker with in the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think the other thing is that like a lot of people have been wanting to not necessarily have a fixed spot. Um, like maybe we have some ghosted recommendations for 4 players, 5 players, 7 players, or whatever the case may be, because right now it's just built for 6 spots. And again, when you've got a 5 player game, you've got somebody who is probably going to be the first player a lot longer than everybody else. And on the other side, somebody who is not going to be the first player nearly as much as that other player, just
Sure.
depending how the
I,
storm
I
is.
wonder.
So
I
I mean,
wonder if the whole.
technically, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I was going to say the whole first player thing seems to it's kind of a moot point with a storm having been the really perfect mechanic for that for years. What if it's not a first player marker but a Kwisatz Haderach marker, which would be sort of thematic to this whole new edition, and it lets you, no matter who you are, jack into those actual advanced game advantages. Well, they're currently the advanced game advantages from the treaties card, but they would become just become the Kwisatz Haderach no matter who you are. Would that cause too many problems? Is that too
it would
disruptive?
cause so many problems. But I like the what I like the way you're thinking, Greg. Is that
Yeah.
maybe there's a way to get it, to unlock this token, and maybe it's a one-time thing. Maybe you can use it as a Karama or something
Mm-hmm.
like that to be like, all right, let's get this going.
How
But yeah,
about
we'd have
if
to come up
you're?
with
I
a
mean,
way to get it that anybody could technically do. Like maybe it's as simple as whoever wins the first battle, um, or maybe it's used and the opposite is like a catch-up thing. Like, all right, whoever has the most forces in the Tleilaxu tanks by turn 5 gets the token, and it does something nice. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. So we might cook up something that as a rule if we get to fiddle around with that rule book. And it'll depend on if, like, all right, is this the rule book for the Kwisatz Haderach edition, or is this, is there going to be a separate rule book going forward that is otherwise cleaned up, or is it a new edition? And in which case, who cares? I don't know. There's a lot to go. What you do you remember what you were going to say, Mr. Nobody? You had a point as well.
It got me
Something
gaming going. I,
brilliant.
I completely forgot.
Yeah.
was it about
So
the
I'm
first
sorry.
player token, or we were talking about that?
Um, no, let's see, because you had just said something about, like getting like this extra token. I
Mm-hmm.
think basically, I remember what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Where people were like, well, hey, maybe you need to move the pre kind of set spots. I mean, I feel like if you just had spaces on the outside of every sector, you could probably, even in like the odd player games, you can probably just like find the most symmetrical like place to put your tokens so that you don't necessarily like run into that problem
yeah,
of
I mean,
like, oh, well,
you could have a little spot in there, and it could have very faint, ghosted player count numbers. So that
yeah,
it's 4. So you're right. We're looking for the 4s. They recommend that you go here, 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 and there for 4 player game. You're like, great, and that's what you do.
sure,
And you're like,
yeah,
oh, if we're at 5, we're going to be using these circles here, and maybe we're not in the sector. We're on the border of the sector, which again, that still works. You can still do that if your dot
sure,
is not right smack in the middle of a sector, because again, it's still has the storm reached you? No, then you're the first player. So if it's gotten to you or it's gone past you, you're not the first player anymore. So
yeah,
it's still
yeah,
pretty easy to understand. And we have done that. I mean, I've played with 9 players, which I have a special mat that's perfectly designed for 9 players. It's got a circle on every other sector. So voila. And then I've got a configuration for how to do that with 6 players. That's very easy to understand. And But yeah, I mean, other people have asked about it. They've asked for it. We could probably find those comments. These next couple of comments are just criticisms of Gale Force 9 and their GameFound, talking about Firefly, whatever. I mean, in defense of them, that Firefly one, that was their first GameFound, so they learned a lot from it. A lot of people that I know backed it, were very happy with how it ran, but there's always going to be something. Something happens, and they had a lot of moving pieces where they were trying to figure stuff out. It didn't go 100% smoothly, but what I will say is Gale Force 9 is, they're a great publisher to work with. They really care about trying to deliver the best that they can. They care about customer service, in my interactions with them anyway. They're gamers, so they know what they like and they want to play games. So I'm going to just burn past these, and we'll do like one more here and wrap it up here. Cleaned up rule set, tighter FAQ is his number one, is Dill Pickle's number one request. And so, yeah, that's important to us. Forgotten wants a new bespoke art. Ilya's work is great and has served wonderfully, but with him not on call, it's time for a fresh take. Do not tie this to the Villeneuve movie. So I'm on board with Forgotten. The Villeneuve look, that's Dune Imperium. So that's not our Dune.
And
but
our own Dune Conquest for that matter.
I don't know about Hollywood Twink. I think Forgotten has gone too far there.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea of maybe freshening of the art and adding a little bit more diversity. I have had the privilege of being able to play Dune with such a wide range of people. And I really appreciate being able to, identify with characters in board games. So I appreciate that sort of diversity. I like that. I play the game. I play games with diverse people, and I'm a little bit embarrassed sometimes when I break out a game and I was like, "Hey, let's play." Yeah, I'm the only white guy at this table, and all the characters in this board game are white guys, and I'm just like, "Ugh, this is not even enjoyable for me." So,
especially with Dune, where clearly the thematically was said, as we all know, it feels like the Middle East if you're from planet Earth.
Yeah,
and clearly those are not all white people.
No,
and it's just
I was gonna.
The movie addressed that, and so we should address that. And Ilya was great. I mean, Ilya did all that stuff way back, what, 10 years ago? More? 2011?
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, originally it was just put online on Board Game Geek and maybe elsewhere as this game is out of print, but people wanted to do a print and play version of it, and he was not the only one. There was another guy too who also did the same thing, and I think Gale Force 9 was just like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, let's go with one of these. And they made a deal. They licensed the art from Ilya, and he did work on that first expansion, and then he just disappeared, and we hope he's okay. But my daughter Solvi got to take over on expansions 2, 3, and 4. And my son got to do the planets for expansion 3 because that is his jam. So, as a father, the Nepo baby effect rolls right off my back. I don't care what the haters say. She did a good job. She delivered very quickly, and I love it. So, I'd love to have her do a refresh maybe on some of those characters because she's got the style down. Mm-hmm. She can do Ilya's style pretty quickly, and if you look at her portfolio, she does a lot of diversity in her characters and whatnot. So that's where we are. So if you're watching this video, if you've made it through nearly an hour of us just pining and speculating once again over, let us know where you agree with us. Let us know if you disagree, and again, let us know what it is you're hoping, but also let Gale Force 9 know. If you follow the project, get on there. If they do put out an update, you'll be the first to know. And chime in on the comments. You do have to, log in to comment, but it's not going to hurt you. Make your presence known. You can also chime in on some, the Board Game Geek list that was put up there by our friend Ben. I think that was Ben that did that. And then this 16,000 is pretty good, but let's see how high we can get it. Not all these people are going to end up getting the game. We learned that through the Conan GameFound, but boy, the people in the Conan GameFound are going to get a great game. So You're gonna be sorry you missed it. Don't be sorry you're missing out on the Kwisatz Haderach edition, and hopefully it will be everything that most of us are dreaming of. Any last words from you, Greg or Mr. Nobody, on what we've talked
I was
about?
just going to say to the audience, always comment, like, and subscribe, and follow Jack on his YouTube channel. And don't miss out if you're a fan of Dune. Don't miss out on your chance to have your voice heard, because now's the time, and that time will disappear faster than you think.
Yeah, we don't want to hear your complaints later on.
Yeah, don't tell us. Oh.
And I know that we will, but we don't want to hear them. Like, why did you do that? And like, well, because nobody told us not to. I mean, not everyone's going to be pleased with whatever it is. We're not even going to be pleased with whatever it is, probably. But hopefully, it's we're going to try to check as many boxes as we can. Like, I think the most responsible thing to do is to put out a new edition. They say don't fix it, but there's some things that could be fixed. And I think in fixing it, you appeal to more people than the unfixed version appealed to. You give people who are already fans maybe an excuse to get the new edition, whereas why would they get the old edition that they already have? I guess unless it's worn out. But I think it's a great game that can be made even greater. It has stood the test of time, but let's finally let it evolve. Let's let it tap into its ancestral memories and take everything good, and then be the true Kwisatz Haderach and reach its full potential. I mean, I think the name right there should have been a flag in the earth to say this is what we're going to do. It's going to be the greatest edition of this game ever, and it reaches both sides of its sense memory.
The two things I have to say, the two things that I'm probably the most excited for outside of just a very clear and concise and very tightly written rule set is I'm really excited to see where the art direction is going to go, not just necessarily in the diversity, but stylistically. Because a lot of the descriptors and a lot of the books, it's like, you can give it to 10 artists and you'll get similar-esque style arts, but you'll get 10 different interpretations of, what does Fenring supposed to look like? How, like Shawnee, for example, she's oftentimes, described as having, elven features, and, in some books she's got red hair, and it's like, it'd be really exciting to kind of see where the art directions ends up going. And the second thing I'm excited about is what they decide to do as far as deluxe components.
Yeah.
I know you had talked about on some of your videos, Jack, and I'm in the same boat with you, where I like to get the plastic holders for the tokens. And I think there's a gentleman who even made ones that are stackable, which is like, mwah, chef's kiss. But there are some other Dune games that are like, print and play, or, kind of, homebrew kind of stuff, where they actually use wooden tokens to kind of represent, forces, or, various things, faction tokens. And even those have like a premium quality feel to them over, just a generic punch cardboard that you would get, out of the base box. So I'm really curious to see like where Gale Force 9 decides to go, what they decide is going to be, quote unquote, like the premium components that they decide to use. So basically the aesthetics and the overall look of the game is what I'm really excited to see how they turn it out, because I'm more than happy with what Gale Force 9 put out in 2019. I've never personally played the Avalon Hill Old Edition or even the 1984 Sting cover edition, but I have seen pictures, and if I owned those, I would be happy with them. So I'm very, very excited to see the new direction that they go in.
Yeah, they got some really great deluxe components for the Conan that has a mix of mediums. So they've got miniatures for the tokens, which in the standard game it's just a cardboard token, just a 2D token, which is fine. But I love the miniatures. They've got wooden god tokens, metal coins, these glass hit tokens. So I am just drooling to get my hands on this edition once it finally ships out, and play with that, with its gorgeous like table size playmat that explains where everything goes, and just helps you organize your gameplay. And so I'm looking forward to that same sort of deluxe treatment here. So I'm with you. I think there's a lot in, the Etsy, if you browse through there, they've got a lot of great stuff on there. But I think there's also room for some other interesting things. So, and I imagine that's part of what they're doing right now is they're probably pricing a lot of things to see what makes the most economic sense to try to, walk that tightrope of offering so many great things, but not making it cost $600. And I think that's that's where they
They
are.
want bang for the buck. They want a good investment, and that makes sense.
Yeah. And so there you have it. Well, that is it. Like I said, let us know in the comments your thoughts on it, and I look forward to the day that we can really talk about what actually is in here, or when they start to make some updates and put out some announcements. We're very excited. This is my most anticipated thing in my life, I guess. If I look at everything else, I don't know what else is topping it for me. So it just not
Even more
knowing.
so than your children.
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, I guess the next Dune movie, but that's even farther
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yes, we will periodically we'll check in, and hopefully the next time we do a battle language about the KHE. We'll actually have something concrete that we can talk about, or at least some vibe. Like we have a positive vibe. We can't share any details, but who knows. So that's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon.